What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Jack Ramsays. Danny Marang here on a Monday night when everybody's just in the best of moods following an absolute shellacking by the Memphis Grizzlies over the Portland Trailblazers last night. And we'll get into all of that and your questions and everything in between. Everybody's walking on pins and needles today. Will they, won't they? Should they fire the coach? They need to fire the coach. What'll happen if they fire the coach? Turn it over to the kids. A lot of bad opinions out there, to be blunt. But I really want to dive into kind of like all of it, just kind of piece by piece, and then get into your questions and try to dissect this stuff like holistically before going into the blame stuff and where I stand on coaching and development and why I say the things that I say, because I want to be clear on stuff, because the amount of misattribution that I saw today on Twitter from very dumb people is excessive, and everybody's like, oh, you should ignore that. It's like, no, I want people to know where I stand. I genuinely do. I don't ever want to mince words. I don't want people out there misconstruing what I say. And with that in mind, again, like, rate, review, subscribe, help us grow the show here. 134-89 was the final score. Memphis last night. No Ja Morant, no Desmond Bane, no Marcus Smart. It didn't matter, because the Grizzlies shoot 55% from the field, 37% from three, and don't score less than 30. Oh, I'm sorry, they did give 28 in the fourth when they pulled everybody. It was trending towards that way. But 31, 33, 42, 28 is your scoring. Portland could not manage a 30-point quarter in the game. And to be blunt, everyone save Klingon, DA to an extent, Denny to an extent, Roops, Murray, Rob, Bari, Wap. And I think Jeremy to an extent. Really, your biggest offenders were the guards last night. Like, all of them were really bad. And I think you just saw a lot of frustrations boil over from the Minnesota game. Frustrations in a million different directions. But can I afford diving into that game? The drums are being beat again by a lot of the same people that, Terry Stotts was to blame for everything. And it wasn't the case then, and I'll stand by this now, is that it's Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's. There's a staggering difference between the NBA and the NFL. NFL coaching differences drastically higher. They are not the same. In the NBA, coaching matters. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. The place that they're in right now, it is not a bug that they don't have playmaking or shooting right now. It is a feature. And it is intentional in the sense of you can agree or disagree, but this front office has decided that they are going to prioritize size, defense, physical ability, and then hope that they can develop shooting. Look at the roster. Okay? And when you do that, you're going to end up kind of where you are right now, with 4 of 42 being the extreme, shooting less than 10% from three. Okay? They are setting the framework of being bigger, stronger, longer, more physical, better defensively. And the trade-off right now is the lack of offense. And again, you can disagree with that philosophy. Like, if you say you prefer prioritizing shooting, I don't think that's necessarily wrong. But when it becomes all in 6'3" forms, then it becomes a bigger problem. But just kind of where they're at, again, it's a feature, not a bug, is the lack of shooting. Okay. Stylistically, I saw a lot of people asking about there's no identity to this team. Prior to this game, all I saw on Twitter and all people said to me on the streets and at the arena was, I love the identity of this team. They're playing faster. They're playing more physical. They're better defensively. Even though they're not shooting, they're much more fun. They're like, but because they got blown out last night, the immediate reaction is none of that existed. Actually, the only thing that matters is that they got the living shit kicked out of them tonight. And don't get it twisted. Do not get it twisted. They got stunted on by the Grizzlies. Absolutely stunted on. Like in every way, shape, matter, or form. And they know it. I mean, you guys, I don't think you saw it. Because I think they took down the camera before Ant came in because we were supposed to go to the locker room. And so much of what Ant said wasn't about what he said in the postgame. It was how he sounded. He was pretty clearly emotional. Like the they don't care stuff, I don't think that's true. I just think they reached a breaking point last night. And whether you want to say that the loss carried over from Minnesota, you want to say that the tanking coming into the year and everybody kind of knowing what the deal was or following on the heels of last year. Everything that kind of feeds into that, you know, I've heard a couple different rhymes or reason. I don't think there's any excuse for it. I don't. But at the same time, and this is what I have said, despite people saying that I've campaigned for Chauncey or this, that, or the other, I've said the same thing the entire time. If he has the locker room, there's no reason to get rid of him because that's the most important thing in this season. And the reason I say that is because I don't think it's a good idea. And again, you can disagree with this. I don't think it's a good idea to bring in a brand new coach and the first edict that you hand him is you're going to lose. Because you're seeing what's happening. For everybody who's out there, it's like, I think this could be a sneaky good team. No, there is a real talent deficit. And part of that is on purpose. Part of that is they hope guys figure it out as the season progresses. But they are chasing ping pong balls to go get an elite level player that they can build their franchise around. Like, I don't, like, that's what's happening. There's nothing there, okay? And I don't think that you bring a coach in and you go, hey, we want you to work on installing, like, your identity and building these sets out, but also, here's, let's put it this way. It's like going to a bakery and being like, hey, I want you to make me a birthday cake. Here's not the right ingredients. Like, try making a cake without flour. You know what I mean? It's just like, it doesn't make sense. And I don't think there's a great answer of getting through this season, to be blunt. Like, do I think Chauncey is the best possible option for them? No, but I also don't think the best possible option is available to them. Now, if it turns out that tomorrow night they get absolutely smoked and run out of the building, I think very real conversations will be had, and I think for the first time there's a very real chance that they could make a change and they go to an interim coach. Like, that's where we're at with this in that kind of sense. And I look at it and I go, this is the place they need to be to get where they want to go. And I've used this metaphor a couple times now, and I think it works relatively well in the sense of it's Shawshank, and you got to crawl through the mile of shit before you get to the bright light on the other side. And right now they're in the middle of the pipe. Like, I don't think that Like they're hoping for the bright light at the end of the tunnel, that the draft lottery goes their way and they can get a franchise changer. And when you have that guy, you look to move forward. I was talking with somebody tonight and going back over the history of the team over the last 7-8 years, so much, so much of not just this team, but basketball in general is predicated on luck. It's so predicated on luck. And to look at the actual title winners from last year, and as much as Brad Stevens is a great general manager, and Joe Mazzulla, as crazy as he is a great coach, luck. They get Jalen and Jason because in back-to-back years, the Lakers and 76ers get it wrong in the draft. It's nothing the Celtics did. Now, you can say they generated their own luck in a sense. Sure, okay. But luck. A ping pong ball goes a different way this last draft lottery. Victor Wembanyama is, running down the court with Anthony Simons instead of chasing him down to block a shot off the backboard. Like, that's the thing. The 2017 NBA draft, the Trailblazers, instead of trading up and taking Zach Collins, let's say they go crazy and they draft OG Anunoby and Jared Allen. Are they in a better spot? Probably. They didn't. And nobody wants to look at where this stuff is at and admit that there is some control outside of their hands. And as I'm seeing the comments right now, start Scoot. He's the future. He's done absolutely nothing to warrant that. And that's not a shot at Scoot. It's the same thing with Donovan Clingan. Like, and this is where I actually will back up Chauncey Billups, because I think in the beginning he got this wrong. I want to flash back to Shaedon's rookie year. And do you guys remember Chauncey saying something along the lines of competing for minutes and being a guy? And then Shaedon was getting some minutes that I think some guys maybe felt like wasn't warranted, while Nasir Little wasn't. And you look at that and you go, yeah, that doesn't make a ton of sense. And you started, I think Chauncey kind of shifted after that. There's not all things are equal. Like, for those that are wondering, there's not everybody gets treated the same. Not everybody gets the same opportunities. And there's some investment, and I think Chauncey learned from that, and he kind of pivoted or learned or evolved, however you want to say it. But you look at where he was at with that, and he kind of moved further to the kind of keep what you kill mantra, which holistically is something that I believe in. I don't want to anoint a player, unless we're talking about Wemby, unless we're talking about LeBron, unless you're talking about a guy you're like, yeah, that dude's he's the franchise. Neither Scoot, nor Shaedon, nor Donovan, nor any player currently on their roster has earned that. Nobody. And that's not denigrating. Those guys know that. If Scoot wants that starting point guard spot, go out there and be at least average. Make the move so that Chauncey can say, okay, take it from Ant. If you think that Chauncey Billups is holding back Scoot Henderson because he's favoring Ant and just doesn't like Scoot, you're crazy. It's because behind the scenes, he isn't doing it. Because in front of everybody, he isn't doing it. And before anybody says, well, Ant's not doing it, Ant's done it. Jeremy's done it. DA has done it. That's why they get more leash. Like I just said, not everybody's treated the same. Not everything is equal. But when you've done it before, you're given more grace. It's that simple. And if Scoot, Shea, Donovan, Roops, any of those guys, and I think what Chauncey has done on the whole with the rotations, some people are like, well, the consistency or inconsistency has been a problem. I've seen so many people say, I want to see them work for it. I don't want to see it handed to them. Well, then if the guy who's working for it gets the opportunity, whether that be Toumani Camara, whether that be Delano Banton, whether that be Ryan Rupert, when those guys get those opportunities, you can't also sit there and say, well, why isn't Scoot playing? Why isn't Shaedon playing? Why isn't Donovan playing? You can't have it both ways, and so many of you want it that way. It's baffling, to be honest. And I know fan is short for fanatic, and I shouldn't try to understand some of the crazy stuff people think. It's so much of what they are and where they are is where they at with their roster. I think coming out of today's practice, there was kind of not a players only meeting, but it was a kind of come to Jesus meeting. That, the airing of grievances, a festivus for the rest of us, if you will. Where stuff was kind of laid bare. Here's what I feel. Here's what I think. Here's this. Here's that. And just kind of a better understanding of where things are. Right? And if, again, you move into tomorrow night against the Timberwolves and they look like they did against Memphis, they probably should move on. Because, and I will be consistent in this, and I will always be consistent. It's the same way I call people stupid for thinking that just moving on from Terry Stotts was going to solve the fact that they had 4 guards playing in their active rotation that were under 6'4", is the same way I will say now. Getting rid of Chauncey Billups won't solve the crisis. You might get a coach bump here or there, but the existential problem of it all will still end up being very simple. They're short on shooters and creators. There's no Chauncey Billups of it all that changes that. There's just not. There's just nothing there that does anything different. Yeah, guys, I'm aware the focus went off of my camera. I don't know why it does that. It wants to get weird. Here, let's see if it'll snap back in. You'll sometimes do it with my hand movements. I don't know why. Shout out technology. There isn't, so much of what people want is they want things to be clean. They want binary. They want black and white. It's all the coach's fault. It's all the veteran's fault. It's all Joe's fault. No. Again, do I think Chauncey Billups is the best coach in the world? No, I don't. He has his faults. But I also think for his faults don't come to bear as much as the things that matter. And again, to me, your mileage may vary, is very simple. I want guys to show up and play hard night in, night out. And if you can motivate guys to go out and do that, night in, night out, when the whole organization knows what the deal is, that's a difficult task. It's a real thing. Like that's a tangible thing. And to me, it matters the most because if you can keep things there, then you have the best opportunities to grow. And I've seen a lot of people lament, Chauncey hasn't developed anyone. Well, I guess Toumani Camara doesn't exist. Ryan Rupert doesn't exist. You've got DeAndre Ayton right now who's taking less mid-range shots, working around the paint more, offensive rebounding more, stepping out and taking threes, rolling to the rim harder. I don't, because Scoot hasn't gotten better, because Shaedon hasn't played in a year. Billups empowered Shaedon in his rookie season when he didn't have to. He handed Scoot the keys to start his career last year. If there's one thing I think Chauncey Billups does well, it's empower guys. Listen to Matisse Thybulle. Matisse has credited Chauncey so much with helping him and believing in him And everyone that has come here, Cam Reddish has said the same, Josh Hart has said the same thing. Like, you just go down the list of players who is like, Chauncey has been a godsend because he doesn't side-eye me on every single thing that I do. If I show that I can do it, I feel empowered and I feel comfortable. And that isn't just a Chauncey thing. That's an organizational thing. That is a holistic thing from top to bottom of like, look, we want to empower guys to feel comfortable, but you have to show that you can deliver on that in order to get that empowerment. Like Donovan, here, perfect example, a recent one. Donovan Clingan, I was like, I don't know about the threes. But apparently in practice, and I kept getting told by everyone, like, no, man, like, he has days where he just shoots that living shit out of the ball. I'm like, I don't know about that. But he's done enough to where if he's open and the ball's moved around a few times, it's not the first shot that you take, but hey, we're under 12 seconds of the shot clock. They're not closing out to you. Let it go. Same thing with DeAndre Ayton. Chris Murray is empowered to take threes despite struggling last year. Same with Tumani. Denny went 0 for 5 last night. He didn't stop shooting at 1, 2, 3, 4. He kept shooting. And you can say, well, he shouldn't be because he can't shoot. It's like, nah, man, get him up. That's development. That's development. And you may not believe in that or not understand it, but that's what that is. And again, this isn't like some sermon of how great Chauncey Billups is. But if you're going to belabor so many things about this is bad and this is bad and this is bad, you can't dismiss the other stuff. And that's where I've always kind of sat in the nuance of this stuff of like looking at what is transpiring right now. I go, who's not getting an opportunity? Scoot's playing heavy minutes. Shaden's been out, but as soon as he's ramped up, he got put in the starting lineup immediately. Two's playing 30-plus minutes a night. Donovan Clingan's playing 14 minutes a night. And if you watch him, he can't play more than 20 minutes a night effectively. Like this year is going, like we've belabored this point, he is going to spend this year getting in NBA shape. He can't handle that. That's fine. Because that's what this is about, development. But if you can't go out there and be productive in those minutes, why on earth would you get more? And that's not a Chauncey Billups thing. That is, again, going back to like my holistic philosophy. This idea that rookies and young players need to play 36 minutes a night is batshit crazy. Full stop, period, point blank. It's insane. It's not how it works. It's not helpful to anybody. If you can't do the requisite, like minimum necessary things with a level of consistency, then you're not only hurting that individual player's development, you're hurting everyone else's. And that's the part about this that's not fair. Like, a perfect example is, look, they just invested real draft capital into Denny Avdia in a trade. And a move that I like. I think Denny can be a really good player. And in spite of him playing poorly, they're starting Tumani over him. They made a choice. And I was talking to people last night. There were some people like, I wasn't surprised, but I am a little bit, just considering the draft capital they gave up, even though Tumani's probably been their most consistent player for them in effort and execution versus expectations. There's a lot that goes into this stuff, and operating as if X plus Y equals Z is just not the way to go. It's just, I don't, look, and again, I'm not expecting everybody to use nuance. Everybody's going to fan the way they're going to fan, and just looking at it's very interesting, like where sections of people fall on blame. And I'm very consistent in this because I said under Terry Stotts the same exact thing. It's Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's. And I think most people would agree Terry's a better coach, right? So, like, I don't know. when you look at it, and I've seen people, since Danny's theory is that it isn't working, keep on doing the same thing. Popovich would not run the same starting five with effort they consistently don't give. What the fuck are you talking about? They literally just changed the starting lineup. Shaedon Sharpe is starting. And beyond the game last night and the opening night against the Warriors where they got spanked, when did they not bring effort? That was the thing. Everybody's like, look, they're feisty. That's all I heard. That's all I've heard from everyone is they've enjoyed this. But it's like the other 9 games are gone out of people's brains. And that's what I mean. Like, you can't litigate and legislate game to game to game. People want changes. Like I saw somebody last night say, I can't believe Ant and DA, they're not playing well last night. He just lets them go out there and run ragged. He yanked them at 19 and 21 minutes, respectively. He literally got them out of the game and got the change that you wanted. That's crazy. So I think just where things are at, again, I'm not, look, if Chauncey has lost the locker room, make a move. Make a move. Because that's the thing, that's my centerpiece for a coach. If you're talking about tanking and going through the hell that this is. If you've lost the locker room, if they are not behind you, you need to make a move. I'm not mincing words, and I've never done that with this stuff. Because my whole point has always been that is the thing that matters the most when you're going through this hellscape. Because you hear stuff from other organizations about how things have gone, and you're just like, ugh, it's awful. It's awful. No one, asking Jeremy about the process Sixers, good Lord. Good Lord. It's insane. All right. Against my better judgment, I'm going to go answer as many questions as I can. We got about a half hour. I usually do about an hour on these. I'm going to get to as many as I can, even if I don't like you. Because there's a lot of muted replies in these questions here. My guy Ricky. And this is one I've been asked before, and I've kind of not avoided it. It's just, I think it's far too soon. And I think that's the way I'm going to price this. Ricky Bells. Shout out to Chef Palomar. Go if you haven't. Food's unfreaking believable. Him and his staff kick ass. Who do you see on the list of prospects if the team were to hypothetically be looking for a new coach in the near future? I think immediately they would probably go to Nate Bjorkgren as an interim head coach. Beyond that, I don't know. Because I don't know who's going to be available come spring, early summer, whatever you want to define it as. I would like to see them not go down a retread coach, but find a guy. And here's the thing. You don't have to. In my head, you have to thread the needle of not a retread coach, but a coach with enough experience, but not head coaching experience, which leads to what will be headaches in the first couple of years as they learn things. And you can see that with Mark Dagnall. You can see it with Will Hardy. Will Hardy is going through it right now with the Jazz. My goodness. Not a man that likes losing. And again, that kind of goes to my whole point of if you know you're going to suck and you don't have that center cornerstone piece yet, yeah, it's super tough to ask a coach to put up with that. Okay. And you can say that's what the money's for and be like that, but people are still people. Okay. But I want to see them look for a young, innovative coach who can match that kind of ideal. And that's such an easier thing to end than to actually make happen. And I think I would wait to make that hire until after the draft. And maybe that's a bad idea because maybe some other coaches get hired in the meantime, blah, blah, blah. I guess the one other offshoot of this is if the Blazers go 1 or 2 in the draft lottery. If they go 1 or 2 in the draft lottery, I think you can hire the coach before the draft. And I think the big part of that is having an understanding for like who that guy may be. And that's the thing where I look at it and I go, where do they get to? How do they get to? And I think that just takes time. I think it takes time. So yeah, that's. I wish I had a better answer for that, but I don't know where they're at in that process without knowing who's available. Slater Smith at Slater J. Smith. With everyone on Twitter losing their shit over the latest loss, what line does the team need to cross before it's time to panic? Repeating last night. This happened 2018 when the Blazers were on a road trip. And Zach Collins turned 21 in New York, and they got the shit kicked out of them. I mean, bad. And that road trip went sideways. They lost in Miami, they lost in Orlando, and things just weren't going well. And I heard that, look, if they lose this game, and I think it was to Cleveland. I think they were in Cleveland, that they might and probably will fire Terry. Right? They ended up winning. They went on actually a nice little run after that. But that's the last time I remember something getting kind of this level of like, oof, this is not good. Not good, Bob. But yeah, I don't think we're like DEFCON 1, but we're in the bunker. For sure. That's part of the reason I'm doing the show tonight, to be honest. Jamal Rod, at Jamal Rod. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. It's double A. So if it's rad, cool, rad. This is kind of unrelated, but it's interesting. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was someone we got in the New Orleans trade. I never said at the time why we traded him to Utah for an injured expiring. Honestly, why? The same reason New Orleans got rid of him, Portland got rid of him, and Utah got rid of him. He just wasn't ready yet. And it's great that he's figured it out and he's landed in a spot in Minnesota that makes sense for him. But I tend to lean more on it being more of a player thing than a team thing when you go through that many teams first. So, and the reason they go after Joe Ingles is something that I think that is still missing in the locker room is you get a voice in the locker room that talks a whole lot of shit in the best possible way, but kind of a pro's pro and kind of where they sit in that. I think that's definitely a big part of it and why they went after him was to try to get one of those guys. Rip City Squid at Rip City Squid. Obviously, Denny's missing some easy scoring opportunities, and there's not much you can do about that. But outside of that, what do you think the team can do to change to get the best out of him? And this is where I will cede some ground to the you have to move Jeremy, because I do believe that if when they do move Jeremy, it does make things simpler on its face. Okay? Because if you trade Jeremy, you're very likely trading to bring other players back. Okay? Probably another power forward. But without all of that, I think the hardest thing right now is they're still trying to work in Shaden back from injury. They're trying to work through an offense. They're trying to get Scoot up to speed. They're trying to do a lot of things, and Denny is further down the pecking order as far as getting him the ball. And I think a big thing is like once they can get their feet on the ground comfortably, and I'm not saying that in the sense of like, hey, they're humming, they're really cooking as an offense, but just not what they've been offensively. Then I think you start, okay, now that we're good, all right, now let's give Denny the ball. Because I want Denny to have the ball. Like, I want him grabbing rebounds and going. I want him getting downhill and putting pressure on defenses. Like, I want those opportunities. I think of very, very quickly, he'll figure out the finishing. He'll figure out the finishing. The shooting, that's always been the question. It's always been the question, right? And, whether or not that sorts itself out. Jake Rossman at P-Town Jake. The ball in the hoop is a real problem. Yeah, no shit. While we can point at development, the team needs 3-point shooting. Their 2-point percentage is trending down because teams are packing the paint, rightfully. Maybe it doesn't need addressing now, but they'll need it to compete. Draft, develop, or trade for it. some combination of all of it, to be honest. The hope is that you develop it internally. Like 2 turns into a viable 3-point shooter on decent volume. Scoot turns into at least competent from 3. I was looking at this earlier tonight, looking at the second spectrum data. Ant gets approximately 1 uncontested look per 100 possessions. Like, he's not getting catch and shoot looks. And if you watch the game, I'm going to write about this. I wanted to wait till about 15 to 20 games to get more film. But the way teams are guarding Ant, they're just face guarding him. They're just face guarding him, getting the ball out of his hands, because they're looking around like nobody else outside of Jeremy can shoot, like historically. So they're making that gamble. And as much as like everyone's like, well, get Scoot the ball and let Ant work off ball, they're not worried about Scoot. They just play underneath everything. Again, this isn't like crap on Scoot hour. I'm just where he's at right now. Okay. Getting Shaden back, I thought his off the dribble threes were atrocious. I really want to see the more catch and shoot stuff or get downhill, play with force type stuff. He just didn't look right. It just looked like he settled on a lot of them. And Ant, that to be blunt, that was Ant's probably worst game as a pro. I've never seen him like that. Like he was on full tilt. But yeah, I mean, the shooting, if it doesn't come around, then yeah, you're in trouble. And then you have to go outside the team to go get it somewhere else. So, next question. Who's most likely to step on the team and provide that strong leadership? Rob seems like he could serve as an emotional leader of the team, but Ant and JG are too past to be that. DA doesn't really seem to be that. Denny maybe. Feels like they really need that. That's Jonathan Sass at J Sass. I think that is something they're missing. I've had multiple people tell me that DA has tried to be that he's trying to figure it out. He's had his own chronicles of stuff of being young and having stuff not go his way. But he's I want to give him a lot of credit because guys in the league don't typically do this, to be honest. Like, he's really trying to change. Whether or not it's working holistically, you can argue against it, or on the whole, not holistically. But I think DA in his own way is trying to be that. Denny, he's too new and he doesn't have enough chutzpah, as it were, to be that guy right now. He could end up being that guy in the long run. But yeah, no, that emotional core guy is missing. And it's something I've talked to them about the front office, and they're kind of hoping one of those guys figures it out. But if they don't, then they'll kind of push through. Jeff Workman, I'm a fan of Denny's, but I'm curious to know what you think the Blazers' plans are for him. Is he part of the Blazers' future, or would they consider moving him? Would they move him this season? They're not moving Denny. No, not right now. I think he's important to the future because I think he does things that are drastically valuable at his size, particularly. And if the shooting turns into anything remotely viable, then he becomes a plus player. But I don't think there's any plans to go anywhere down that path in any way at all. So, but yeah, I mean, you could take a look at it and kind of work your way from there, I guess. But Nathaniel Carter at Nathaniel Pilot. If the Blazers could redo the last 3 drafts, who that was available would they have picked instead of the current players? Well, I'm not going to say anyone this year because no one knows about this year. Whether, I like to give that at least 4 or 5 years before going down that path. And even in Scoot's draft, even if you think, let's say Scoot, worst case scenario, he's a backup or average guard in the league and he doesn't end up living up to his potential. The only one who I think has remotely come close to being like, that's interesting, is Koulibaly at 7. But the Thompson twins, like, I understand why you don't look at those guys, just because there's a hard ceiling with the shooting, and they profile as like superstar role players. Like, if you take Andre Iguodala's athleticism and put it into late career Andre Iguodala's brain, like, the shooting's just never gonna be there, but the other stuff, super helpful. That's like a really, 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 really super valuable guy. And then in 2021 or 22, with Shaden, like, just, you could squint and say Jalen Williams, but I think a lot of that has to do with where Jalen Williams lands, also being older. Like, but beyond that, I don't think there's anything that jumps off the page. Like, I really like Tari Eason in that draft, but nobody was taking him that early. That's why he goes to 17. I think the big thing the organization values is taking the biggest swing. And you can say Edey's better right now than Klingon, and you'd be right. But the idea of Donovan Klingon and what he could be is likely more valuable. Whether or not he reaches that, same thing with Scoot, same thing with Shaden. Like, the preference for how they go about it, like, the organizationally, I get it, and I tend to agree. So I wouldn't change much. Like, I'm a guy who would rather go for potential. And it's easy to say because my job's not on the line. But that's typically how I value guys. If you look at the stuff I've written about the draft in the last couple of years, I've been very consistent on the kind of guys that I like. So, there you go. Rufio at Coach Matt Caruso. Obligatory Chauncey question. How much time do we have left? Well, F around and find out kind of a deal. I think that's where we're at. Chris at Gen X Trailblazers. Assuming we don't capture the flag, should the Blazers draft the guard? If yes, what will you do as a GM with the current guards on the roster? I mean, there's a million different ways that can go. If Dylan Harper or Igor Demin at BYU, Nolan Traore, VJ Edgecombe, Boogie Fland, like, there's a million guards in this draft. If you think that if you don't land one or two in the draft and one of those guys or somebody else pops, then you just take the best player available. And I think organizationally, that's where I think they are. I have a pretty good feeling. So, Ryan Robertson at Ryan Rob 2121. Who's a vet this team could add that you think would benefit the younger guys? Doesn't necessarily need to be attainable, but that would be preferable. The guy that I think that would do them a ton of good is not the guy who plays, because I think that guy's harder to get. Like, I think Harrison Barnes would be a really, really good get, like, just a pro in that sense. But I think he's kind of like Jeremy, so maybe not as vocal. I prioritize having a couple of those guys. Like, fundamentally good basketball players with size. Like Chris Paul, in like the ethos of Chris Paul, he'll wear on you, but he'll make you better. Like, I bet you if you give D.A. Truserum, probably wanted to kill Chris Paul plenty of times, but at the same time, probably would say, yeah, he made things really easy for me. And he's like, they set the framework for him. You know what I mean? So, but the guy that I would like that is kind of the sage vet is Taj Gibson. Taj is the guy. Like, he's a pro's pro, and that's a guy that I value a ton. A ton. At Nerdrunner asking about the next draft coming up. Has your preseason top 5 changed? Where does Demon slot in? Thoughts on Will Riley? I know he's not physically imposing, but a 6'8 shot maker is enticing with top 5 upside. Look, it's early in the season. Everybody's beating the hell out of everybody. The good teams are really cranking it out. Cooper Flagg has looked otherworldly against lesser opponents. Same thing with Demon. Will Riley went off. Trey Johnson has gone off. I'm not going to change my where I have anybody right now. I have all those guys. I think Riley, is the only one that I would consider moving up, or Trey Johnson, like a spot or two. But yeah, we'll evaluate it probably in about a month. Actually, probably after Thanksgiving. There's a big tournament in Las Vegas. There's a couple other tournaments between now and then. I'll go back and go. Let's see kind of where we are. That's where I land on that. Bradstreet Racing at Bob Bradstreet. The other radio show, you mentioned that Sharp needed to get his stuff together as well, and this is after 3 games, which this was game 1, starting with the actual starting 5. What does he need to do differently? Doesn't he deserve time to adjust to playing with the vets? Yes and no. I don't care about missing shots. It's about taking and making the right ones and playing with force. Like the thing, I've alluded to this, but I had a lot of people tell me this summer that Shaedon found that switch of like going at people's necks. And I mean that in like a positive way, because he can kind of float in and out of stuff. And there was a lot of the a little bit too cool for it from Shaedon, because his talent is incredible. Like that's not up for debate. And like, people can argue back and forth of where they think Scoot is. Shai's talent is insane. It's truly upper tier level talent. He's got a unbelievable athleticism package, great touch. He's incredibly smooth. He can do all the things physically that you want from a top tier player to do. For him, it's the mental edge. And I don't care if he misses shots. I want to see him play like an asshole. Get downhill and be physical. Play with force. Play with ferocity. Play with some anger. Play with some edge. Like that to me, the skill stuff will take care of itself if he continues on the right path. But he was floating through stuff. And that's part of the allure of his game, is that he's able to just kind of float through stuff. But I want to see him really get it going, because the expectations for him are so high, because the talent is so high. That's why when I said earlier, the idea of holding people to different standards and different levels, like the standard is the standard, but then there's another standard for guys that are supposed to be more, right? And if you're going to say that Shai is that guy, then he's got to go do it. Leslie says, I think worry that Shai is worried about his shoulder, then he can't be out there. If he's worried about it, he can't be out there. You can't play scared. And that's, it's easy for me to say, blah, blah, blah. It's like, look, I'm a guy who worked through intense circumstances. I understand it better than most people on this planet. To flip it over to Rob Williams. One of the things I was watching when he made his debut the other night was how he landed and how comfortable he looked or didn't look. And he had the lob that was way out of his range, and he goes and gets it, and he landed overextended on one leg. And he didn't look down on it. He didn't check it. He didn't kind of reach down. He just did. It was like, man, I love that for you. I was super, super, super excited. I was like, good. And he had another one a little bit later, the same thing. Or when he jumped up and intercepted the pass, I think it was supposed to be a lob to Gobert, and he landed on one leg again. I was like, that's it, man. That's it. And if Shai's not able to play with that level of force, that is a big problem, not only for him, but for the team, because they're not going to be able to gather the data, and Shai's not going to be able to get a contract out of this. We're seeing the way the CBA is going. If Shai can't go out there, look, I'd be shocked if Shaedon didn't have off-season surgery to try to do some work and repair some stuff. That wouldn't surprise me in the least bit, because shoulders are finicky and dumb and stupid, and I hate them. Right? It's once it goes, it has to be addressed. But if he can't forcibly play, and he's just kind of going through stuff in a league that is a lot more physical than people are willing to admit is, that's a problem. That's tough. So, I don't know. I get what you're saying, Leslie, and I'm sympathetic to it. But if that's the issue, that's tough. Daniel at Priest Lake Dan, what was the elephant in the room that Casey Holdahl was talking about that Robert Williams III talked about? Look, I've talked to a couple of guys, and I didn't ask this specific question, but my general belief and understanding is the elephant in the room is the tank and what this season is, and the fact that they don't have the talent to hit threes, and that they just need to understand that is going to be a thing. It's not a fun conversation to admit that you can't do something, especially as a professional, as a team, right? That, to me, is what I think the elephant in the room was. I have a general idea of kind of what came out of that. But, I think they took a step to rectifying some of that stuff. But I don't think you just solve it in one fell swoop. It's just going to have to continue. So, I don't think it had anything to do with whether or not players were getting traded or anything like that. I don't think that was it at all. Ramsays Squid, do you think the Scoot would benefit from studying prime John Wall? I think his play style really benefited. No, because John Wall got to the rim unabashedly, and there was anything anybody could do about it, and he finished at an insane level. Let me pull John Wall. Shooting accuracy. John Wall's early years struggled at the rim a little bit. 50th percentile, 77th percentile, 50th percentile, 90th percentile, 80th percentiles. And that was the crazy thing, was his frequency. 88th percentile, 91st percentile, 71st percentile. It drops back off in the 96th, 85th, 96th, 92nd, 85th. He was a rim demon. Now, he could not shoot to save his life anywhere else. So maybe you're on something? Oh, no, that's not fair. I'm sorry. That's not fair. That was a joke. It was a dickhead joke, though. I'm sorry. Anton Smith at Pizza Man. Other than the obvious top few guys of the draft, do you have any interesting college players to get excited about? A lot of them, and I'll be writing about it. There's a tease, but we'll dive into that. John Lynch, I thought this was a really interesting question. I had an immediate answer, but I think it is, there are a lot of people that are not willing to admit they're in one camp and not the other. John Lynch at JLynch_34. Do the Blazers need to suffer through developmental seasons until they get a potential top 10 player? Or is it more important to make the playoffs without a chance to win a championship? This is a... what's the right word? I'll go light. It's a complaint I have had about the Portland market since I came back here when I got out of the Air Force. General fan likes status quo if status quo is above average. And this is going to sound so hoity-toity and arrogant and just blah, 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 blah. But the teams that I grew up rooting for and liking, the early Trailblazers teams that were title contenders, USC, title winners, St. Louis Cardinals, title winners, the LA Kings when they brought in Wayne Gretzky, they were really good. The Raiders, who, granted, I know, last 20 years, dog shit, I know. I grew up, though, they were title contenders. So I grew up with fandom across sports of teams that were title contenders at various points in my life. And to me, this is, again, your mileage may vary. I would drastically prefer a shot at a title in a 10-year drought over 10 years of above-average play. Every single time. Give me the ring. Give it to me. Gimme. Let me have that moment that I can call back to for the rest of my life. Duck fan hates me when I talk about Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Lendell White and the linebacking core and every NFL player that was on that USC team. And I will forever remember every last bit of those seasons. Does it suck that they're not good right now? You're damn right. Will I fall back on seeing those in my lifetime? Abso-freaking-lutely, because there is no greater joy as a sports fan than that. Than that culminating moment of, yes. Yes. But in this market, and it is unique to this market, despite what other people will tell you. I've lived all over the country, been all over the world. It is a uniquely Portland thing that it's not just mediocrity. It's being above average. And I think the general fan, not necessarily diehards, the general fan in Portland is like, I just want to go to a game on a Tuesday night and have it be good. And that's good enough for them. Makes me want to peel the skin off my face. I hate that. It drives me cuckoo. Which is why when people say, oh, you're just carrying Joe Cronin's water, it's like, no. Joe's just doing the thing that I wanted to do 7 years ago, which is pick a path. If you're going to go all in on Damian Lillard, trade CJ, go get Jimmy Butler or Paul George, and go get shit done. If you're not going to do that, tear it down. Now, it took an extra year to get there, and some back and forth between, some mild passive aggressiveness between Dame and Joe. But nobody wants to be the bad guy in that vein, and I understand why neither of them wants to do it. Because Dame wants to come back here and be a legend, and Joe doesn't want to be the guy that runs Damian Lillard out of town. It's not good for business for either one of them. But I get it. So, I am on the I am of the mindset that I don't like mediocrity, and I'd much rather crawl through whatever this is with an opportunity. It doesn't even guarantee the opportunity to maybe have a team that's good enough to be considered a title contender. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy the other stuff. That's not what I'm saying. You can look. Joe Shane and I were doing Blazers Outsiders, and God, we were up so late in that playoff series against Denver. Game 4, Game 7. And I've got videos on my phone of how unbelievably excited we were because it was so much fun. So much fun. But you knew, and I even said it then, people got mad at me. You're going up against the Warriors, and you're just not that team. It was fun. It was fun. But it doesn't, like, you have to split those two out. Injury tacos. It's like my worst and favorite things. Injuries and tacos. Who are we actually building around? Is anyone who would definitively be on this team in 5 years? If I had to buy a jersey for someone who wanted to wear it for 5 years and have that player on the team, who should it be? Woo. That hurts. Because there isn't a single player that meets that criteria right now. And that's, I think, part of the problem. Is Shaden has potential. Donovan has potential. Scoot has potential. Tumani, he could be like, I heard Haberstroh link some of the early seasons for 2 and Jimmy Butler. Look, 2 turning into Jimmy Butler would be the turn of the century. Whew. Fun. Because Lord knows, even though Jimmy's antics get tiresome, I like Jimmy in general. Peak Jimmy Butler would be a fun player to have on this team. Super fun player to have on this team. But yeah, I don't know if anybody meets that criteria right now. Craig Ansbach, I know you don't think Scoot should start, but we're losing anyways. What the hell? Start Ayton Williams, Grant Sharp, and Scoot. Aren't we taking anyways? It would be a nice bench. No. Because you're setting everyone else up to fail, and you're putting other people in really bad spots. Like, you're asking Rob to primarily play power forward, which he kind of slides down to. Neither one of them really want to leave the paint. It's like, that's not what they do. Grant's not good as a 3. Your shooting is just gone. No, it doesn't. Like, the whole, like, well, we're tanking anyway, so why not play the young guys argument? Just they're not playing. You don't need to elevate them up until they do something more. Yeah. Caleb Snodgrass, at CRS Nod, or CR Snod 65. Best Thanksgiving food has been beat to death. What is the GOAT Thanksgiving drink cocktail? Look, I like me some brown water, but I've made no secret that my favorite drink is not one that I think most people would think is like anybody else's favorite drink. I don't know why. Maybe it's some sort of attachment that I formed to it. But God, do I love a mojito. Love a mojito. It's fan-freaking-tastic. Fan-freaking-tastic. So, and I think it's a Thanksgiving drink, a March drink, a day that ends in a Y drink. But I'm weird. I get it. So, MB at Kiwi Trailblazer. What's one adjustment you'd like to see from each of the rotation guys that help get the team out of its current funk? It's a really good question. Without like saying, giving magical powers, shoot 40% from three. If you're telling me the lineup is Ant, Sharp, 2, Jeremy, DA. And your bench is Scoot, Denny, Donovan, insert one of Rob, Roops, Chris, Delano. However, there is a version of that. Ant, it's his confidence back. I think that's pretty simple. Shaden, it's playing with force. 2, not hesitating on threes. He's still doing a little bit of it, regardless of how poorly they're shooting. I want him taking those shots. Jeremy, I think for the most part has been, like, other than missing shots, I think he's been good. I've seen a lot of people, Jeremy, ISO ball. Like, I can pull you a million stats, guys, and show you that the Blazers aren't an ISO team. They can't be an ISO team because if they're an ISO team, they can't get anything done. They're 16th in the league in isolations per 100. They're not an ISO team. And the funny part about it is the two teams in the NBA with the best records are currently the most ISO-heavy teams in the league. So, little nugget there. DA, roll harder. I think, but again, I think he's done that. Like, or screen more solidly. Scoot, have a plan every time down the court. To me, that's Scoot. That's not shooting. It's having a plan. Having a plan to how to attack. It's, I know I've got this defender in front of me, knowing the personnel on the floor. Like, if I attack this, let's use the Clippers, because Ivica Zubac has been hell for Scoot in his early years. It's very much a problem with very large big man who eats up paint. If he's got Terrence Mann in front of him, and he thinks, or he knows, let's just say he knows he can beat him. He knows he can beat him, and he can get to his spot. And Zubac knows he's like, the Trailblazers are shooting poorly. We want to induce them into shots. Okay? Then if Scoot can get by man, get him on your hip. Get him on your hip. Like, know that, like, I'm going to attack his hip, get him on my hip, and make Zubac make a decision. I don't want Zoo to make me make a decision. I want to dictate terms. And if that means Zoo steps over and Scoot wraps a pass or throws a lob to DA on the backside, then awesome. Like, that's what I want to see. Like, have a plan, knowing what, where, when, how. And I'm not asking for A, B, C, D, and E. Just option 1, option 2. Because I think sometimes his biggest detriment offensively is when he doesn't have a plan or the plan gets blown up immediately. It's hezzy, tween, hang, dribble, pull up. And it's so disjointed. And I think that's the things, like, and they're trying to emphasize it to him. It's just, he I don't know if I've said this publicly. I think the G League Ignite was a detriment to basically everyone who played for it. I think it did everyone in that program a disservice. I understand why it existed. It got those guys the opportunity to become professionals and make money. It's just like, but I think that it took Jalen Green 3 years to look like a remotely effective player. Like you look at these guys and none of them, like at some point in time, somebody has to do something from that program. So, but yeah, Scoot, it would be a plan. Donovan, hold on to the ball above your shoulders. Don't bring the ball down. Like that to me is a simple thing. It's not like one of his issues is, because I think he's been so big, is like for the majority of his like quasi adult life playing basketball, he's never had to deal with bigger guys, which night in, night out he's going to. So in the past, you keep the ball up here, you're fine. Or you bring the ball down here, you're fine. Like, nobody can bother me. Well, guess what? He's got other guys on the playground that are just as big as him. Hell, last night, a guy bigger than him in Zach Edey. So I think it's just a matter of like keeping the ball up, both as a rebounder, like grabbing it up, even like high pointing a ball. And when he does have the ball or catches it offensively, catch high, finish high. Like stay high. Like that would be a simple thing for me, for Donovan, like an adjustment. Who am I forgetting? Denny, go smoke a bowl. Chill out, dude. He's putting so much pressure on himself, and you can see it just eating him alive. It's eating him alive. The frustration, like this was the same thing that happened to Chris Berry last year, of like just beating himself up to death. Because the expectation, and again, that standard for him is set high. You can see it just welling up for him. Just find a way to chill, find your zen, find your whatever spot you need to do. Get in where you fit in. I said this on Twitter last night. Find something small and start from there. Because I have the utmost faith in that he'll figure it out. Like that's a thing that I think that would matter for them. Am I missing anybody else? Just for this rotation? Rob Williams can do no wrong. He's fine. I'm not making any adjustments for him. So yeah, I think that's everyone as far as like the top 8, right? Yeah. So it's a good question. Thanks for that one. Bourgeois, BW Schwizzle, guessing. What's going on with Ant from day one? He hasn't seemed engaged. I've seen so many people say that Ant's worried about getting traded, or he's going to force his way out of here, or this, that, or the other. And like I'm not going to speak for Ant because what I talk about with him and every player is private as far as those things go. But none of that stuff has ever come up. It's just not. The biggest thing is the lack of shooting has become problematic, and how teams are going at him, he needs to adjust to. And the nature of it is he's the only kind of on-ball creator who can generate stuff at all 3 levels, and teams know if they take him out of it, it's going to make him limited off-ball too. He's got to find a way to score, and score effectively and efficiently, but they've installed a new offense that they're still working through. For everybody who's out there saying Chauncey's offense, they've changed it. So, and I think you're looking at young guys and a bunch of new guys. Like, you don't have the collective wisdom, the built on a system of like running something for years. The inherent knowledge that kind of comes with that. It's a new install. And so guys, not only do you have the young guys learning it, the veterans are learning it too. And I think part of that feeds into it. And I think from a psychological standpoint, I think just the losing wears on guys. And that's not an excuse for Ant. Ant will be the first one to tell you he sucked this year. He knows. He knows he hasn't been good enough. Like, everybody who thinks that that it doesn't. Ant in the post-game press conference sounded like he was at near tears. Not because Chauncey chewed him out, but because he feels like he's not doing what he needs to do, not living up to expectations, not being the guy he can and needs to be. It's there's so many people want to point to this, that, or the other, and when they just have no idea of what actually goes on. Like, it's just, so yeah, he's struggled. Reese Hucks at Reese Hucks. What do you think the actual league value for Ant, Grant, and DA is? Can Kamara keep up his production? What do you think the cause of Denny's struggle? We hit the last one already. Ant, Grant, and DA, it all depends. Tell you right now, Oklahoma City's probably looking around at centers. That's for sure. And this whole idea like Ant's gone at the deadline, I don't think that's necessarily the case, to be blunt. For as much as people are like, he needs to be gone to clear way for a scoot. I'm like, don't think that's really gonna be 100% for certain right now. And I don't think necessarily that they're in a hurry to move up off of DA. So that value is going to change. And look, if the right deal comes along, they'll make a move. But yeah, there's a lot more questions in here, but we're an hour and 12 minutes in, and my voice is fried, and I got to do back-to-back radio and TV shows tomorrow, and I might be solo tomorrow on the radio. So we're going to cut it off there. Maybe I'll take some of these and maybe write a post on Patreon and unlock it or something. Just something simple, but I appreciate all you guys. Look, even the ones of you who drive me crazy, I do appreciate you. Like, the fandom is fandom. It's fickle. It's a beast. It's so much that kind of goes into stuff, and like I said, even those of you that agree with me, disagree with me, that's fine. The one thing is that I hope is that at some point in time, I've helped you understand some stuff better. That even if you hate my guts, you learn something, or you think about something differently, or you have a better understanding as you kind of work through the machinations of it all. It's just, I love this stuff, and I have the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful blessing of being able to quite literally do it for a living, and I don't take that for granted. So thank you. As always, if you see me at Moda, come say hi. I'm there all the time. Section 113, media section. If you see me walking around the floor before the game, say what's up. I always like talking with everybody. Other than that, I have my game notes article that I pocketed because of last night. I'll probably push it. A lot of it I kind of covered here, but I'll just kind of put it on there on the Patreon for everybody. Just more content. I have a film study that's coming up kind of about the Blazers offense that I'll dive more into it. Just kind of what they're doing, what they're trying to do, what they're not trying to do. All of those things. I want to wait till about 15, 20 games just to have more film. Quarter of the season-ish is about a better spot to, like, some of the trends and stuff have died down, or the spark points have kind of died down. So, I appreciate you guys. Love you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do this, and thank you for participating and being active and everything in between. Last question here. Why do you block people on Twitter? Because people are assholes. Pretty simple. You're not going to get me blocking anybody if you're not being a complete douche. I don't block people I disagree with. If I did that, I wouldn't have anybody following me, and you wouldn't see me debating or arguing with people. Pretty simple. I bet you if you're one of those people, I could pull up your tweet, and you were probably a complete D-bag. Like, I have yet to have anybody who's like, I didn't do anything, and I go look it up, and I go, really? So, it's pretty simple. Like, for everybody's like, oh, Danny's a dick. It's like, no, I'm just not gonna deal with your bullshit. It's that simple. Like, I know some people are like, you should be above this. You're in media, and it's like, because I'm in media, you think you can talk to me or treat me a certain way? No, man. And I've always kept the same attitude. So, on that note, look, man, that's the one thing I've always said. I'm always going to be true to me in this stuff. I'm not going to kind of change who I am. I'm going to tell you what I think. And if you think I'm saying something to carry somebody else's water, you haven't been listening for the past 12 years. I've been very consistent about my thoughts, my beliefs, my how I go about things. And if you want to ignore that, that's fine. But, you know, it is what it is. Like, rate, review, subscribe, help me grow the show. I'm going to have some guests coming up here on the next Blazers road trip. We'll bring in some guys. Casey has said he'll pop back in as not as needed, but to have him pop in. Travis Demers is going to pop in. I'm efforting a couple different players on the road trips, just get you guys more familiar with some guys that haven't been around or haven't been on the show. So I appreciate you. Thank you again. On social media, at Danny Marang, at Jack Ramsays. You can email the show at jackramsays at gmail.com, jackramsays.com, or patreon.com/Jack Ramsays. Good Lord, too many slashes and .coms in there. Also, good Lord, Rip City Wrap Up on K2 2.2 some nights, all on YouTube, KATU, hopefully every night. Had a technical issue that kept it from going up there. But thank you all so very much. I appreciate you again. Even those that I argue with and go back and forth with, I go back and forth because I care. If everybody's like, why do you entertain this stuff? Because I genuinely care about this stuff. It's like it's part of my job. I don't ever want to not care about it. When people say I care too much or this, that, or the other, it's fine. I've gotten me this far. I've failed upwards. It's fine. So on that note, everybody have a wonderful, wonderful night. Take care, and we'll see what tomorrow on the back-to-back brings against the Minnesota Timberwolves. If something happens, we'll be back. We'll be back quick, and then we'll tackle that one day at a time. Take care and have a wonderful night.